Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss a new video every single day.
And the deposit was lost. In the early 2000s, I was working at a graphics and t-shirt printing shop in a major college town in the Midwest. I was a graphic design major, and it just made sense for me to be involved in screen printing and design. The owner of the company was a very socially awkward dude that went to the university and stayed around after graduation to make his money. He had deep roots in the community, was on several alumni boards, etc. As such, he had many large contracts with universities in the same athletic conference, one of the largest in the nation, as our college. This meant we spent most of our day rehashing old sports designs to meet new criteria. A lot of it was event-based, meaning if a certain team won a certain game and there needed to be a shirt made to commemorate it, I was on call to do that design. Now, we'll call him Ron, wasn't a cheery guy. In fact, I don't think I'd ever seen him smile. But as of late, he'd been getting more bold with his three designers, myself, Tim, and Carla, who was the art director. He would venture up to the art room and hover while we worked. He evidently didn't like what he saw because he made me take my inspiration board down because it was clutter. The hovering and critiquing didn't sit well with us, but whatever, it's his business. Then he hires his dad. To do what? I'm not really sure. But whatever it was that was pissing Ron off about his designers became his dad's obsession. He started hanging out in the design room and literally real-time critiquing the designs and the amount of time it took us to do them. Needless to say, we weren't happy. So one day, Tim and I come back from lunch and Ron's upstairs in the design room lighting Carla up. He's yelling that she was costing him money because designs were sent back for revisions or took too long or just plain weren't any good. As we were all very competent designers and worked under ridiculous deadlines all the time, it kind of confused us. Regardless, Tim and I both liked Carla as a boss and didn't appreciate Ron yelling at her like he did. She came out of the room crying and pushed past us on the way down the stairs and went home. She'd been getting recruited by another screen printing place in town anyway, so she took that opportunity to jump ship. Good for her, we thought. Fast forward about a month. Tim and I were even more unhappy than before because now not only were Ron and his dad constantly breathing down our necks, but we had a 3-person workload with 2 people. He became even more pushy and rude and started to come unhinged. I almost hit him once. That's how he talked to us. Tim and I hatched a plan. The CWS, College World Series, is in Omaha every year. The CWS was Ron's second biggest cash cow next to the NCAA men's basketball tournament in March. Every year he rented an 18-wheeler with a 4-color process press in the back of it to take to Omaha. The deposit was $10,000 and like another $10,000 for the full rental. We'd watch the games and start getting the designs ready as soon as it was apparent a team was going to win. We printed the shirts right there on the spot and had them hot off the presses for people to buy. It was a great system that worked, as long as he had people who knew how to design and print the film. So, the day before the College World Series starts, everyone's getting ready to go to Omaha. Ron was riding in the truck, his assistant and several other office staff were pooling in a van, and Tim and I were driving separate in my truck. It was to be a convoy. The truck took off, the van fell in behind, and we fell in behind the van. They turned on the highway toward Omaha, and Tim and I went to the bar. They didn't notice until they got to Omaha. I saved the voicemails just in case I disappear someday. He shuttered 4 months later and rebranded as a design-only firm. Gotcha, B. Literally strangled the golden goose in an attempt to squeeze more eggs out of it. And our second story. And our next story. Treat me like crap for almost 2 years for minimum wage? I reached my breaking point, causing my former boss, who was also area manager, to lose his job. So I worked for a Dunkin' Donuts in my hometown, started in February 2016, and worked till around midsummer last year. My boss/area manager, we'll call Big B, or B for short, was an unprofessional and horrible boss. I was still in high school at the time, and he only gave me weekends for months on end, occasionally giving me a weekday just to clean the store like a monkey. Big B was an a-hole to say the least. He'd treat us workers like we were dogs, and he'd be noticeably annoyed when a customer would take a long time to order, or when we'd F up an order, he would two-face us. Tell the customer that he's sorry that we screwed up, then when the customer would leave, he'd make snarky remarks about her to us like we were in on berating her. Stupid old lady. Didn't know what she wanted, man. When it got busy, we were supposed to work as a team. But when it got busy, he'd yell at us and tell us to hurry up, which would actually put us all in a bad mood and we would actually work slower. When it came to making pack-out, which was unsanitary, made donuts and baked goods like that too, no gloves, he would get complaints, but his boss, who owned the store, wouldn't do anything about it, so he'd get away with unsanitary workmanship. This doesn't matter now because he'd just make me do it almost every day in the summer. So when summer came around, I got more hours, which was nice, but stressful beyond belief. After summer ended, he offered me the opening coordinator position because he had no one else and I needed more hours and money, so I took the offer. I had to wake up at 2 a.m. every morning to go to the store and bake all the goods and make extra donuts before the store would open at 4 a.m., and I needed the money, so I didn't complain. But it got too stressful when he would constantly berate me because he'd come in at 4 a.m. to help me out with customers, but he'd make me help customers, then he'd yell at me for not finishing on time. I got $8.75 an hour to come in and bake. My two good friends, both named David, needed a job, so I hooked them up to work at Dunkin' because I thought I would have extra help for morning baking. But of course, they get put on customer service, and seeing how B would treat them disgusted me. He treated them like they were brainless monkeys, and I started to question why I was doing this to myself. I got a second job at a hotel as a bellman, and I was treated so much better. The two Davids got jobs there too, and we all pulled two jobs for a while. Then midsummer 2017, after a year of baking and getting up 6 days a week at 2 a.m. just to now start leaving at 6 a.m. to go to the hotel, I decided that I was working for the wrong man, and I up and left the store at 5:30 a.m. before B comes in. I told my coworkers that I loved working with them, but I just can't do it. I left, rode home on my bike, and called both Davids. Told them both not to come in and that I was sorry that they had to go through his insults on how they were so slow. Later that week, one of my other coworkers gets fired by him because she finally snapped on him. Then another coworker just left because I sent her a big long paragraph on why she should quit. She heeded my word and left. I've been gone from Dunkin' since last summer. Today I had orientation for a new job, and I offered to give a sweet old lady a ride home because she lived in the same town and we'd be working at the same store together. Turns out her daughter works at a Dunkin', and I heard Big B got fired because of the mass loss of workers. It was the best thing I've heard in a long time. He treated me and my coworkers like crap. Unsanitary piece of crap is gone. And our last story. Cause me hassle on moving out? I'll cause you 50 grand in home repairs. So this happened a few years ago when I was still new and ignorant to renting apartments. My landlord was a right piece of work and violated so many laws, but again, I was new to the whole thing, and he knew that and took advantage of my ignorance. I'd lived in one place which I really enjoyed and signed a renter's agreement with the landlord. Then, after 2 months, he said I had to leave because I made too much money. I loved this place and was paying a very decent rent, but he said not to worry, he owned another building that had an available apartment and I could move into it. Begrudgingly, I made the move over there. It wasn't as nice of a place by far, though it still had the same amount of rooms, a bedroom, and a smaller office, so I figured I couldn't complain, and he charged me the same rent, though I never signed anything for this place. He just literally switched keys with me. The new place was kind of gross, though. Cracks in the walls, black mold growing in certain corners. The bathroom door literally didn't close. The radiator leaked water, and the toilet, well, let's just say it wasn't the same color on the inside as it was on the outside. As the months went on, I began to notice things were different when I'd come back from work. Sometimes it would just be a, did I leave those papers like that, to, there's muddy footprints here. I figured out he'd been coming into my place when I wasn't around. And that was the last straw. With the support of my boss, who's actually a really good friend, I began looking for a new place with a different landlord. I finally did, and told my boss I was unsure if I should put in notice or what. He asked if I signed a lease or papers or anything, and I said no. His words were, "F it, pack your crap and move." Therein lies the most stressful move I've ever experienced. I didn't own a lot of things, but what I had meant a lot to me. I'd earned it. I had my best friend there helping me pack up my stuff. My best friend was also my boss's wife, and 2 of their children. We got through a small amount of loading things up when Mr. Butthead Landlord got tipped off. He then kicked my friend off his property and told me that if I left the apartment, he would change the locks and not let me back in. Keep in mind, this is not before the end of the month. I'd already paid for the entire month. So I sat in my apartment crying, trying to figure out what to do. I called my boss, who was coming quickly because his wife and kids were there, and one of my brothers, and I was scared to leave the apartment. I didn't want to lose any of my things. After my reinforcements came, the landlord backed off, and quickly I got all of my important things out of there, though I made sure someone was always inside the apartment at all times. Before leaving, however, I took some pictures of the mold, cracks, and other disgusting things around my place. A few days after settling into my new place, I went to City Hall and the Health and Safety Board, showed them the pictures. Well, turns out they were just as interested in them as I was. Nearly a year later, I ran across one of my old neighbors from inside the building, an older lady that lived just below me. We made quick pleasantries, and she asked if I had ever heard what happened after I left. I said no, as my new place was in the next town over, so I don't really frequent the neighborhood anymore. Apparently, thanks to the lovely pictures I sent in, my landlord was investigated and forced to do over $50,000 worth of repairs on the building. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.